All right, friends, I think we are about, oh, go ahead. A picture? Sure.
You want us to get this group together? Or just pretend like we know each other? Sasha, where's Sasha?
Okay, good evening and welcome to Chicago Public Library. I'm Jennifer Lezak with the Cultural, Civic, and Literary Engagement team in the Adult Services Department, and on behalf of everyone at CPL, welcome. Before we begin, we ask you to please silence your cell phones. I would like to thank the Chicago Public Library staff who worked to make this event possible. Tonight's event is also being live streamed on CPL's YouTube and Facebook channels and will be available for immediate on-demand viewing following the event, so if you have a friend who couldn't make it, let them know. After the conversation, our guests will take questions from the audience, from those who line up at the microphone in front of stage, or those who use the Menti, which the QR code will be appearing a little bit shortly after we get started. And virtual viewers, you may also put your questions into the chat. Tonight, we are very pleased to welcome back to CPL our longtime partners at the Chicago Council on Science and Technology, as well as some new friends from the National Science Policy Network, for an important conversation about the influence of artificial intelligence in medicine and the crucial role that science policy plays in shaping its future. I'd like to thank C2ST for all their wonderful work in inspiring us all to think more about science and technology in all of our lives, and for bringing such essential programs like this one to our library patrons. I know we're all eager to hear more, so at this time, please join me in welcoming Jay Walsh, Board Chair of C2ST and Vice President for Economic Development and Innovation at the University of Illinois System, to the CPL stage.
Thank you very much, and welcome everyone, and especially welcome to the panelists. So glad to see you here. C2ST started almost 2 decades ago. As its name implies, it is this intersection of science, technology, and more so policy, because the intersection of all of those components is vital to society. So I want to thank you for being here today for this event. And thank the organizers, some of whom are outside, and guided us down into the auditorium here. But when you see them, please do thank them. Tonight's discussion, the intersection of AI and health, is absolutely essential. It will affect everybody, and some of us already, whether we know it or not. I'm going to leave it to the experts to tell me more about what that means from their points of view. But certainly as a biomedical engineer and somebody who trained in a hospital and somebody who's been in the field for a long time without the AI component, but with a very much a technology component, I know the impact of technology on healthcare. And I've been around for a while and can see that this is going to have a huge impact on how healthcare is delivered and how all of us receive our healthcare. I also want to say thank you to the National Science Policy Network for joining us, for driving this, and for being partners in this program today. So with that short introduction, and so that we can get to our experts on the floor, I'm going to now turn the floor over to Dr. Tipring Piquato, and I hope I didn't ruin that name too badly.
No problem. I'll share with you all.
Sure.
The way that you say my name is Tipring Piquato, and it comes from Spock's wife on Star Trek. So live long and prosper.
I think I'll remember this one.
Thank you. Thank you. It is my pleasure to be here. I am the CEO of National Science Policy Network, and this is our first collaboration with Sasha at Chicago Council on Science and Technology, and Nicole. And we really, really appreciate being here. National Science Policy Network has an initiative called Politics Aside and Policy Forward. And when we first joined together in conversation, collaboration, we thought that this would be an interesting topic to bring to Chicago and have a discussion. Thank you, panelists, for joining us today, and I can't wait to start with the questions. So Politics Aside, Policy Forward is a nonpartisan initiative designed to foster meaningful dialogue among and between scientists, policymakers, and the public, like yourselves, on critical science and technology issues. Through our discussions, and sometimes we have workshops and networking events, Politics Aside creates a space where science and policy intersect, free from political partisanship to advance evidence-informed policymaking. So today we have with us 5 guests, and I'll be moderating, and we'll be asking for your questions. So keep them in mind, and during the time, you can ask questions on the app called Minty, and we'll be taking questions live and through that if you're watching live streaming. So thank you. Okay. Now we're hot mic'd, yes. So the first question is really to get to know our panelists. So my first question is, please introduce yourselves, and also if you could share with the audience something that they may think is surprising that you're working on, or a process of part of something that you're working on in AI and healthcare, that they might go home and be like, oh, I went to this really cool talk and they said this. But also, please introduce yourself. And we'll start with you, Senator.
Yes, so I'm State Senator Robert Peters of the 13th District, which is literally right close by, stretching from downtown all the way through the lakefront to the Indiana border. It has Northwestern, the University of Chicago, and it also has the new quantum campus that we just put a shovel into. And you know, that's been on my mind a lot because, you know, quantum is sort of this great hope, and it's often talked about in the sense of sort of in the defense side of things, but there's also the healthcare component, and the role of AI and quantum in healthcare discovery is going to be, I think, very important, and Illinois can be at the forefront of that. But making sure that we do this right and do it as best as possible for people. One where we're conscious of the environmental impact, the use impact, and that making sure that we're investing what helps a broad group of people, not just worrying about encryption in China. And so that's been a thing that I know that we've been involved with as an office, and in my district on the southeast side, is the fact that we have this unique opportunity around AI and quantum that is going to be hopefully historic and extremely beneficial for folks. And so that outside of just being part of the AI task force, just being able to see that work starting to come together, being in meetings with folks we were talking to, I shouldn't talk too long. I was born hard of hearing with speech impediment. When I start talking on a mic, I could talk forever and I gotta stop. But we were meeting with folks in with the British government, and you just know that on an international level, Chicago's seeing this as sort of a next sort of an industrial age type of possible breakthrough, and knowing how important that is both for us in terms of the state and locally, but on a much more global scale. So I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having me, and not going to get too deep into pretending I know everything about quantum, which, let me tell you, I don't. But just grateful to be here. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Mary Ellen Geiger. I'm a professor at University of Chicago, a medical physicist. And an interesting part about AI is that we have been developing it there in radiology and medical physics since the mid-1980s. And that I was part of a team that developed computer-aided detection for screening mammograms, which was then licensed by the university to a startup company, and that had received the first FDA for detection. Since then, and in fact, it included deep learning. So AI's been around for a very long time, and it's been part of your medical care, actually, for longer than you might think. And that also led to the first FDA-cleared device for computer-aided diagnosis, where the output is getting close to saying likelihood of cancer or not. So being on that cutting edge and in a historical sense, and then now working with others as these algorithms improve, it has been exciting, and that's my story.
Good evening. My name is Bob Morgan. I'm a state representative in the north suburbs, about 30 miles straight north of Southeast Lake County, serve in the other chamber as Senator Peters. I think one thing, and I know we're going to get into some specifics, but one thing that's really interesting that you might not know is that as policymakers, as legislators, there's a lot of stuff we do not know, especially when you get to science and technology and anything that requires any kind of deep dive. We are one inch deep and a mile wide. But legislators around the country share information all the time. And so one of the things that Robert and I do and a lot of other colleagues do is that we're sharing best practices around the country on AI right now. So this morning I had a conversation with a New York assemblyman. A couple weeks ago I had a conversation with someone from California, because the idea is that we are trying to learn from other states and other regulators to do a better job and just to continue to pay it forward and do better than those that came before us. So it's something you might not think of, but as policymakers, as legislators and electeds, we're always trying to learn from those who did it better and then to take it one step further. And that's one thing that I think I'm constantly trying to listen to what other better ideas are out there.
Great. I'll introduce myself again. I lead the National Science Policy Network. I'm actually a neuroscientist by training with a computer science undergrad degree. And so I've dabbled in whatever we might think of as AI, and also have helped in government relations on the western states. So I live in California. So I'm happy to be moderating today.
Yeah, I think it's on. I'm Amber Thompson. I'm a partner at Mayor Brown. We're headquartered right down the street, but I also actually live in Washington, D.C., so I flew in just to be with you all today. My practice consists of privacy and cybersecurity, and so I like to say that I help companies with their AI governance policies and programs, and I help them to kind of slow down, because everyone is in a rush to implement these AI tools, and they don't stop to ask themselves, should we? Just because we can. And so I like to be their little Jiminy Cricket on their shoulder and say, hold on, let's think about it. And also let them know the legal risks, the reputational risks associated with implementing these tools, especially in the healthcare space where we have such high risk data. I'd say one kind of fun fact, if you will. I always look at it from a privacy angle, and so as we just heard, AI is so embedded in a lot of these healthcare systems that sometimes clinicians don't even realize that they're using the AI tool. And what that means is that they're collecting patient data, and the patient may not have given their consent, nor do they have any knowledge that their information is being used in an AI tool. And it's really the wild, wild west out here right now. So what does that mean? That means that that patient data is likely being retained indefinitely, and maybe it's being retained at a third-party server overseas, outside the reach of our laws, right? So we have transparency issues, we have consent issues, and we have patient data privacy issues. And so that's my little fun fact for everyone.
Good evening. So I'm Rosalind Chua. I'm an associate professor at DePaul University, 5 minutes from here. I walked. I was trained in computer science at the University of Chicago, and I teach data science courses at DePaul, and my area of research is between data science and healthcare. One of my projects that got more attention lately was funded by the National Science Foundation, and it found myself between community health and AI, which is how I find myself invited here. And I'm sure we'll get into more details, but that's my story, my short story.
Great, thank you. So you'll see that the panelists have a breadth of knowledge, and we're gonna start with something that sparked from your comment, was that you may not even know, or your practitioner may not even know there's AI behind the scenes. So Dr. Geiger, can you give us an example of like what could be happening that's hands-on AI usage in the field, so we can get a flavor of that?
So for that, I have a little cartoon here that For that, sorry, not used to talking in a mic. For that, we have a small cartoon here. If you, well, it's getting there. So basically, AI you can consider as just another medical test that will be incorporated by the clinician. So it starts with, I work in AI of medical imaging. In fact, medical imaging leads the way in AI at FDA. Over 75% of AI algorithms as a medical device come from radiology. So we've been doing this quite a long time. And basically, the patient comes in, gets an image, has it analyzed by the computer, a report is generated, which goes to the clinician to incorporate into their decision-making. The human is involved in all these steps. Now, for example, mammograms. Mammograms for decades have had a computer read that could be incorporated. And that first one was FDA approved in 1998. So that's something AI has been around for a while in clinical practice. I have another one, and you can keep clicking. I have two things to say. One, I went to my cardiologist, and he knows what I do. And he said to me, yeah, you know, AI is really interesting. Maybe someday we'll get to it. And then he goes, I've got all your tests in. I just need one more. I have to go get the heart flow. And I look at him, I go, that is AI. So they don't even know they're using it. And that's a real life story. My heart is fine. But if you click one more time, one of the big things we have to worry about as we implement it in the clinical area is the responsibility. Is it the AI algorithm? Yes, it should perform at a high enough level, but there's also responsibility of the end user. The end user needs to use it as it was approved. If it was approved for a specific type of image, and I have also real life experience in this, if it was approved for a specific type of image and you put in a different kind of image into that AI and it doesn't work, that's not the AI's fault. That's the end user's fault. So it's a shared responsibility. And if you click one more time, there's also issues with data. But I'll leave that for later since I'm supposed to keep it short.
Thank you. Well, there's possible that there's worst case scenarios. So what are they?
Oh, there's a lot of, like any new device, it can go wrong. I think we have to look at AI as just another new device. In fact, FDA looks at it as AI, as software, as a medical device. You have a new device in your medical practice for anything, you need to double check that it works and that it works on your patients. You have to do the same thing with AI. And part of it is, as I show up here, is you need to train it on representative data. And sometimes that's very difficult to get. And that's why later on I'll show you MIDRIC, which is an attempt to get hundreds of thousands of medical images out there free so everyone levels the playing field so all AI investigators can use it. The other thing is we talked about the end user and the responsibility, and not to just use it off-label. Off-label is using the AI with a different type of image that it wasn't approved for. So a lot of things could go wrong. I've seen published papers. I've seen data from my own lab where we could generate an algorithm and we look at the performance, it's really high. But then we start digging. We start digging and looking at the different cohorts of patient types. We look at different types of where the image was obtained, from which site. And we also look at how the image was obtained. Was it on manufacturer's X X-ray machine, or was it on manufacturer's Y X-ray machine? All those can bias. And so we've developed tools to help people understand these potential biases that could give an erroneous output in terms of evaluation of the AI algorithm and an erroneous output when it's used clinically.
So it's hard not to want to expand the scope of what AI can do, and we already know in a popularized medication off-use label right now, all of our GLP-1s that are not primarily for weight loss but have a interesting side effect of that. So actually, to the representative and senator, You are on task force and you are writing laws and legislation to protect people from the worst case scenarios, or even to give guardrails or guidance to use. How do you, one, find out about worst cases that you are not necessarily experts in this field or other science field? What are you doing to educate yourself and know what guardrails to even place without stymieing, without stopping the good work that AI can do?
I'll try to be brief, and I'll just say the first thing to think about is that I'm a millennial, and I say that in an actual positive way. Usually that's not how we talk. And that is, we were at the sort of birth of the internet as we know it, which means we are also very skeptical of tech, that we were sold tech as the greatest thing that will ever happen. And meanwhile, we would say we thought Facebook was just one thing and now it's another thing, right? So I say that to say is that for me, I can't speak for Bob, but for me as a legislator, it's first saying we want to make advancement in innovation, but we want to not buy into, excuse my language, the BS that is often sold with innovation, with technological innovation, because we were there when we were told and promised that X, Y, and Z was going to change the world and do all this in this sort of, fantasy, mythological manner. And so approaching that advancement with a deep level of skepticism and holding it to a strict standard is something that I try to do, which is like, I don't want to stymie something. I want to help it grow, but do it in a very careful manner. And then I'll last say is, as a millennial, we don't want to be seen as a legislator who's also a dinosaur. And knowing, we all remember seeing congressional hearings of people who didn't understand how the internet worked at all. And so managing and navigating that at the same time. So knowing what you do know and knowing what you don't know and managing that while also having a drive to advance innovation, but also having a skepticism about how it's sold. And I will say lastly, this will be my last point, I think one of the biggest challenges is that there's so much speculative investment in this that there's risks with that. And again, for me, I know that having seen how the housing crisis has collapsed, the dot-com bubble, so being very careful and mindful of the speculative investment and its role in how it pushes the state is something that I also keep front of mind too.
Yeah, I learned a lot about the risks of AI through watching the Terminator movies. So I use Skynet as kind of my North Star and what to avoid. That's only a little bit of a joke, but the truth is that one of the things that legislators have a bad habit of doing is it's tough for us to acknowledge when there's something we should not be doing. Right? We always have an inclination to regulate and to control and to stop, especially when we see objectively bad things. And so the House and the Senate passed a bill this year to regulate AI therapists. And one of the questions that we got from the large-scale AI companies was, what do you want us to do if somebody asks us this? If somebody comes to us and says, I have suicidal ideation, I want to do this, what should we say? And that's, to me, a great example where the legislature cannot answer that question. We are not the best ones to dictate word for word, line by line, answer by answer, because this is evolving way quicker than Robert and I can pass a law, and way quicker than policymakers can come up with the best construct and the right answer. It's going to be they're going to be really pressured by the free market, by what do we expect in terms of being a good partner in this world, because we just can't do it. We cannot step in every week and month when new technology arises that's stepping into our lives and have the legislature come in and regulate that. It's not going to happen. So that's something that I've seen play out certainly faster with AI because it's evolving so fast. And we were already slow as a legislature to take action. And now with the AI happening so quickly, we certainly cannot even begin to pretend that we can step in. And so it's acknowledging that and then taking the actions when we need to make sure we create a network of safety for the state.
So there are timeline or slower activity in the legislature. And so now I'm turning to you to answer. Litigation is much faster, right? Something happens injures someone, they feel like they have an issue, they sue for it, or companies come to you to help mitigate the risk. Can you tell us really sort of what in your role are you seeing, and how is the legal landscape as part of the policy-making ecosystem really shaping the guardrails or the preventing and protecting people?
Yeah, we're all behind. I'd say that. I mean, there's only so much we can do when the laws aren't in place. And we're seeing that, not that this is AI related, but with like wiretap laws, for example, right? They're being used to sue companies because they have cookies on their websites. That's never what that law was meant to do. But now a plaintiff's firm has decided they're going to use it. And I think we're going to see a lot of that with AI. And AI tools as well, where a plaintiff's firm is going to get hold of a law that is just some minuscule law that was never used in any other purpose, and they're going to say, "Hey, I think we can tie this to AI, and we're going to sue everyone," just like these firms are suing everyone in California right now. So I think it's going to be really interesting.
So the National Science Policy Network audience is generally early career scientists. And so you said some terms that I'm familiar with: plaintiffs' attorneys, consumer attorneys. Can you kind of behind the scenes, what does that mean to you, and maybe for a general audience? Can you explain sort of what those two types of lawyers
My arch
are?
nemesis, basically. Being at a law firm, we're usually opposite the plaintiff's firms, and that means that those are the lawyers that are representing the people who have been harmed, right? Who are claiming to have been harmed by some sort of wrong that they're alleging a company has committed.
Great, thank you. And there's oftentimes a tension between what the lawyers on different sides of the spectrum are, and then the people that come to you for help making new laws to protect them. So that, I think that...
Completely opposite, usually, I will say. Completely opposite.
Okay, tell us.
The folks that they represent and that come to them, they're saying, hey, we want our data protected. We don't trust these big companies. What's happening? Do something. And then I'm representing the companies that are like, hey, we're just trying to make your life better. We're just... Give us a moment. And so usually we're coming at it from two different sides of the coin, where we're trying to kind of smooth it over and say, hey, we have all of these safeguards in place. We have all of these protections. We're following the law. We're following the regulations that as they're written today. But the consumers are so much more savvy these days. I look back 10 years and folks weren't as concerned with their data. They weren't as concerned with, data breaches and whether or not their data is on the dark web. These were things that weren't being talked about, and now they're more savvy. They're going to their legislators. They're going to the AG's offices. They're going to these plaintiffs' firms, and they're really demanding, which I admire. They're demanding, hey, someone needs to stand up for us because our data is being sold to third parties without our consent. It's being, stolen by these bad guys and posted on the dark web. And this is my health data, right? This is super sensitive data. You guys have to do more about it. And that's, I think they have a tougher job than we do, for sure.
Different job. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the reality is, we have an audience here and more online that are really interested in, how can our data help us in the future be healthier and safer, but also what happens if it gets into the wrong hands. But even going into before it gets to the wrong hands and before there are laws and protections for that, you've done some research and studying about like sort of bias and things. So can you tell us more about what could go wrong or limited even as we're developing these new cool technologies?
So I can say that I was lucky, but at the same time, I think that's a lesson because I happen to work with, so DePaul is Chicago, but also Sinai Urban Health Institute is in Chicago, and they have 2 decades of health equity research, right? So working with them was inherently trying to work in health equity. Now, I looked into it, but I think that that's part of what we're discussing, to try to pick applications of AI as a society that are actually for social good, right? To measure like good social impact. So besides my case, there are metrics now that are trying to measure, the difference between the accuracy of a model for a certain group. And you need to know what are these different groups that you may need to be watching for, right? And that depends. So the data from Sinai Hospital might be different than the data from Rush Hospital or Northwestern. So you still need those experts there to tell you what are the potential biases that are in your data. And I think my main, takeaway from the audience should be that you need to keep those experts in. It should not be the data scientists. They should be part of the story, but you should have who else is the domain expert, who knows about the biases, who knows about the domain.
And can you legislate that? I don't know. Well, one of the things that I'm thinking about is how can AI help me? And one of the things is that, I'll share some vulnerability or some personal things is I'm mixed race, Italian and Black. I'm Californian, so I eat avocado toast most of the time, but, I do eat meat as well. So I want my AI to know me. And I feel like that's sort of like chasing Where's Waldo. And can you explain more about how AI can help me, you, with diagnostics and treatment, more particularly that we should not guardrail anything, we should let it, AI be innovative?
Yes, I agree with that. One of the examples is in screening. Screening implies trying to find a disease, such as breast cancer or lung cancer or another disease, on asymptomatic patients. Those are patients who are not showing any sign of disease. So if you look at breast cancer screening, think of a Where's Waldo book. Okay, you have a 1,000-page Waldo book. Waldo's only on 5 pages, and you have a limited time to search everything. Sometimes you find red and white buckets. Other times you might find Waldo with his red and white shirt. But that is what screening mammography is like. And so here, the computer is playing the role of an aid, of trying to point out particular areas that have red and white stripes to act as an aid to the radiologist. Now, sometimes you find a red and white bucket, it's still red and white. You have to say, well, is that a bucket or is that Waldo? So that's diagnosis. So in that case, once something is found in screening, there may be multiple follow-up tests, multiple types of medical imaging, X-ray, ultrasound, MRI, and so then it's not a oversight error, which is what occurs when you're doing screening, because most cases are going to be normal. It's more of how do I integrate all this different type of data, and that's where AI now has another task, and that's in diagnosis. Now, in doing that, and I should point out, you can also, people are developing AI to estimate the cancer risk. What is my risk that I might have cancer in 5 years? And in fact, a very early study was done on screening mammography, and this was back, I think, in the 70s and 80s. And even there, in the title of the paper, it said the Gale score, which is what was used to estimate risk for women. In the title, it said this was only done on Caucasian women. Back then, people knew already, if you develop something on one type of population, whether it be population of how the acquisition system differed from another acquisition, other aspects of it, of the patient, say based on weight or something else, they knew that if they're developing a test, and this is true also for non-AI, the same kind of thinking we have to apply to AI. We have to make sure our data is representative as we train the AI as well as we test the AI. And people know this. In the research, people know this. when you go through FDA, you're asked, well, how does it perform on the range of cancers? How does it perform when the end user is a new radiologist compared to a seasoned radiologist? Things like that. But what happens is that it goes out there and the real world is less controlled. Also, there's a thing called data drift, where the data changes over time. The new machine comes in, so the population is now being imaged on a different quality of the same image. How does the AI change with that? Do we have things in the follow-up, once an AI device gets out there, that can look for these areas or these times when the AI is not performing as well as it can? And a lot of it is just like treating a new device. I don't know if that...
Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to add your question about how does AI help you, right? There's, in medicine and healthcare, there's some amazing technology already that is just changing and transforming healthcare. So in hospitals, some of the biggest likelihood of injury in a hospital is a fall risk or bed sores. All right, those are two of the most common issues. If you're already admitted to the hospital, we're going to get sicker, right? So there are now AI-embedded television screens in your room that will identify whether you are a fall risk or whether you are likely to develop bed sores. And so that's a staffing issue. So if you don't have enough nurses on staff, if you don't have well-trained staff, this is going to keep people healthier. And that's just the beginning. So it's really, really amazing in a lot of ways. Still think we should have some regulation, but there's a lot of stuff happening that's just going to transform healthcare really quickly.
Well, speak to that. You're on a task force. And
Yeah,
so
but-
what do you, yeah.
So, first, I think as a legislative regulator, you should always think about guardrails, and you should always think about them, even if it's, I read enough Camus, like a 17-year-old French kid, to know that the myth is Sisyphus, and you have to think about it as a Sisyphean task. And when dealing with technology in the world, it's Sisyphean, and that's okay. It's not about whether it's going to be perfect. It's about the challenge of trying to take it on. I'm also quite a nerd, and I love movies. And speaking of another movie, thinking of Oppenheimer, and thinking about the question of what does it mean to take responsibility. Oftentimes, politicians like to buck and pass the responsibility to other people and all that stuff, but there's an immense power to the idea of taking responsibility, and the ultimate critique of what the movie's saying about Oppenheimer and saying about a lot of people is the inability to take responsibility and to own your actions, and then the guilt of that responsibility. And so to say all that is to say, like, yes, we need to push and drive innovation as much as possible, but you have to still chase the difficult rock of regulating. You just have to, because if you don't, you get left with a possible situation that could be absolutely brutal for people. And next thing you know, and I'm saying this to the lawyer here, next thing you know, the talcum powder you have is giving a bunch of babies cancer. And so do we want to be there because we didn't look and check to see if the talcum powder we gave to people had a bunch of cancer? No, we should try, even if it's an uphill battle, to do so. And so I think the idea of, there was a debate about whether we wanted to keep the task force to be ongoing, because it's an ongoing challenge. We don't normally do that. When we do a task force and then there's a time period, then we're done, it doesn't have an open-ended date. This has been a true challenge as to whether we should have that task force just continual so that we can continue to learn and to grow as the technology continues to learn and grow, and as the consumer side of that technology expands and expands. Because you mentioned GLP-1s and the role of AI and the role of targeting you so that more and more people then get targeted to buy GLP-1s from HIMSS, and next thing you know, they're dealing with a vomiting crisis that is going to backlog you because they're going to be in the ER, which costs the state money, and that's you, the taxpayer, having to pay for the ER because someone else got overly targeted to lose 50 pounds in 6 months and get really sick. We need to think about what is the overall regulatory system that led to that, and how do we make sure we manage it. Just because someone got a great, their stock went, it was phenomenal. And so to me, that's why that task force matters, is because those cases are going to come up, and you might want to have a space for when you find out the Johnson & Johnson talcum powder has a little bit of cancerous material in there.
I am going to do a big plug for not my home state to really commend all of you guys so far on the knowledge that you have. I want to participate in your task forces and in your legal system and in your academic studies. So thank you. This is really exciting. You can tell that you're really knowledgeable. So you've each touched on things where there's collaboration, cooperation, and learning going on, right? From the university level to the legal level to the legislative level. And that's really what we're trying to foster, is this ecosystem of science and technology, scientists and technologists, along with the legislators and the legal experts. So in your role, what's the biggest act or research or process, task force, et cetera, where you've incorporated different types of voices, and how can we join you in that right now? I know we're deviating a little bit out of AI and healthcare in particular, but we wanna be part of this system, and how can we help you, and where are you looking for input? Research first. How do you integrate other than your brilliant mind?
There's one word answer: data. When developing, when testing, when following it, how well it's doing in clinical practice, you need representative data. That's very important. In fact, when one is developing an algorithm, I estimate 80% of your effort is getting enough data. I could have 3 really good algorithms, AI algorithms, but if the data is wrong, they all will be wrong. And so data is very important, and so I think we need to work through these privacy issues and kind of see where we can meet in the middle, because if an algorithm, if AI is being run on you in a medical situation, you want to make sure it represents what you need. You know, if Netflix gets it wrong, I just have a bad night. But if the AI in assessing a tumor gets it wrong, and I undergo unnecessary surgery, or the cancer is missed, we have to hold AI in medical research much higher. And so we do need these large amounts of data, and we need them open to all the AI investigators, because you don't know which AI investigator is going to have that really clever idea for the next big thing.
I'm hearing release your privacy rights.
No.
No, not what I was supposed to hear.
Maybe.
We'll get back to that, because how would you like to add on it?
Maybe
versus
somehow
what I heard?
anonymized, right? So that it can be leveraged but not traced back, which is hard to obviously, guarantee. But I think I exactly know your point. And I like that answer, and I would add basically ways to define human-centered AI is where I'm going and where I will need more help. So like I said, this project between DePaul and Sinai, it's targeting specifically community health workers, right? So they are the liaison between the patients from the south and west side of Chicago and Sinai hospitals. And our way of addressing our project is to put them at the center of our AI model from the beginning to the end, right? So put them, and that involves a few steps. So even though that's one word, I'm gonna, say, there involves some level of AI literacy, and it doesn't mean like everybody's gonna become data scientists, obviously, but to Mary Ellen's point, to understand that the AI is only as good as what it was trained on. People can understand that. We can explain that in ways that anybody can understand. Put this expert in the center, because they know the patients, or in my application, but in any case, so they know what are the needs of this AI model, why are we building it, and then retain the human oversight, because again, I'm gonna borrow from your point, when we build a model and we say it has 80% accuracy, in some fields, it doesn't matter. It's not a big deal, right? Classifying cats and dogs is what I pick on. But in healthcare, the 20% error, you want to know what is this error, and you want to address it. And so you want to retain human oversight. It should be like showing it to the radiologist, and the radiologist having the last word, not just the AI making the decision. And building explainable model and building models that actually also convey confidence, right? It should not answer, I'll pick on ChatGPT for 1 second, but it should not answer with the same confidence on every question. It should tell you when it doesn't know and defer to a human expert. That would also increase the trust. And finally, like I come back to my point, highlight human stories, highlight real world impact. I like the Facebook example because we can say it was supposed to be connecting. Is it actually connecting people, right? So the same thing for any AI tool that we're building. Accuracy is a great metric for us, but what is the real world impact of this AI model? And that touches, everybody on this panel.
And
Can
that's
I
a great.
add real quick? I think about this in the fact that, think about new drugs that come on to the market and how much literally testing and how many labs are done, how much research is being done, how careful they are before they put that onto a human. And so when we think about healthcare, we should be literally thinking the exact same way when it comes to AI, that the human is not the rat to be tested on, that actually we need to make sure we're dealing with human life and the in protecting that again, you don't just immediately test a drug on somebody. You want to make sure it's going through all the stages it needs to go through before it comes onto the market. And even then, there's human trials that need to be done to make sure it's right for a human at that point. We need to think about healthcare in people as, yes, there's data and you want to get as much data as possible, but the person is not meant to exist to be the test of that data. We should think about how we're honing the thing we're using before we make it so that the human themselves is the missed cancer patient. And now, let me back up. Doesn't mean that there won't be people who aren't missed. This is like the world, like my sister, this is a human thing. My sister went to 2 hospitals. She was 12 years old, and she went to like 2 hospitals. They didn't catch her cancer, and then she went to Children's Memorial Hospital, and they caught it, and she'll always remember it. I'll always remember it. That was a very human example, but those things happen in life, and you can get mad at the hospital for missing it, but that happens in life. But at the same time, you want to minimize that as much as possible.
Absolutely. What are some ways that scientists and the public can engage in your work, if at all?
That's tough. Yeah, no. I can't really think of any ways. I guess, yeah, no.
Getting more informed on legislation or litigation opportunities, or
That
what?
doesn't help me, though.
That doesn't help you. Okay, we're gonna get to BIPA in just a second. So, yeah.
When legislators are developing policy on AI in particular, we are not hearing from scientists. We are not hearing from researchers. We're hearing from associations, which generally speaking are going to be representing a corporate interest. Doesn't mean they're bad. Sometimes they are. But sometimes it's just because they're biased, right? And so it's hard for us as legislators. That's why I love this panel. There's a big disconnect between what we're doing in our respective worlds, because we're trying to get the best practices. I'm working on regulating health insurance and how AI is used to deny health insurance claims. And so you have 3 parties in that equation. You have the state regulators, who do not have any AI policy experts on staff. So you have to contract out with somebody who's an AI policy expert who understands AI technology. And then you have the insurance industry, love them, hate them, whatever, doesn't matter. They're representing their clients, insurance businesses and companies. And then you have tech companies, which are represented by an association, which are paid for and supported by and developed by the largest AI companies in the world. And missing in all that are the researchers and the science and the non-biased policy bent, and it's hard to get through that and to cut through that. So that's one piece I think, especially as we move forward, and this is going to happen all the time, we need better direct access to that so that we don't mess something up inadvertently. Because we think we're getting the right information, but if we're only getting 10% of what we need to know, you can imagine our legislation and our policy is not going to be good.
If I could respond to that, and first I want to say, when I say data, I only work with de-identified data. I never know who the patient, so that's a given. It was such a given, I forgot to tell you that. But yes. So I think I like this. Let's work more with the academics because we do have skin in the game in the sense that we want a better outcome. But most of us don't have big companies and have to worry about that. But we are there, we learn how to not just develop AI, but we have methods to evaluate it. Evaluate it as we're developing it, evaluate it on a separate independent test, evaluate it for FDA, and then we need policy on evaluating AI as it continues in practice. Post-market surveillance, they call it. So,
And that is something that you mentioned, right? Is like, as scientists and AI tools are able to represent an accuracy, confidence level, we also have to understand how to translate that to people that don't work with stats in the ways that scientists work with stats. So when I say we have a theory, there's a very scientific way of what's in my head. But, you could say like, well, I have a theory of, how we and brie cheese, right? How we got penicillin. And it's, in layman's terms, it's sort of like my opinion, my best way of thinking. And so scientists sometimes have terms that get misinterpreted. And so working to better explain ourselves and to translate that information is going to be really important.
Yes, I totally think that this kind of panel and this kind of collaboration and your work, for example, is we need more of that because, like we were discussing, scientists are not the best sometimes at telling the story or at translating their work into policy. So they need to be talking to the right people and making those connections. And I heard, like, for example, insurance come up. The work we were doing, we were also talking about accuracy and improving accuracy on predicting emergency department readmission, right? And that's exciting to us, but actually it's not that exciting to everyone. For the patient, it's important. For the hospital, it's important because you can attach dollar amounts to it. So one good feedback was just simply if you can translate the accuracy in savings for the hospital, now you get a new type of attention. And similarly for us, we have to define what is important to us as outcome. And sometimes that's harder to, I know I said social good and social impact. Sometimes that's harder to put a number on, but I think it's for society and people to define like what, and you're saying there's good sign that people are more savvy and they're, aware of what they want to gain from AI. So maybe we can define that better.
You have 2 House bills, and you only briefly touched on your background, your House bills. Would you like to explain a little bit more? And it's not over, right? They're still continuing. So how can we help? How can we engage?
There's an adage in politics, especially in Springfield, that legislation never dies. So you might not pass it. It will take years and years and years, but never dies. So you might have a really horrible idea, but every year you can try again with that same horrible idea and just not pass it. So I passed 2 bills out of my chamber in the Illinois House this year dealing with AI. One, dealing with AI therapy bots. And that was something that was motivated by and presented to me by the Social Work Association. And they said, hey, Bob, are you familiar with this phenomenon? This was about a year ago. Phenomenon of AI therapy bots, these apps that are being substituted instead of a social worker or a licensed professional. You're just going on your app and you're getting help. And I really wasn't that familiar with it. I'd heard about it. And we started working on it in the spring. And by February, and especially by March, we started to see almost every week there was a new national story of somebody who had committed self-harm was aided by AI. And there's AI therapy apps. And so there's really 2 categories there. There's the apps and the programs explicitly created to be an AI therapist. And then there's the large-scale AI platforms, your ChatGPTs and OpenAI and you name it, Character AI. These are apps that are being used by millions of people right now as we sit here for a lot of purposes. Vast majority of it is helpful, positive, creating new opportunities and informing people and opportunities for growth. And when you start talking about healthcare, as everybody on stage would agree, you start talking about life and death situations. And that's where it veers into an area where the legislators want to step in and we want to say, whoa, you're talking about something that's being used to commit suicide or something that's causing someone to make really bad, reckless, potentially fatal decisions for themselves. That's when the regulators are going to want to step in, the legislators are going to want to do something about it. We passed that bill, passed the Senate, and the governor signed it. It was the first state in the country to ban AI therapy bots this summer. It passed the legislature without a lot of attention. And then when it passed, all of a sudden, all the major companies really freaked out when they saw that the governor might sign it. And Governor Pritzker got a lot of phone calls from a lot of companies you would recognize asking him to veto that legislation. He signed it, it's law. Other states are looking at it. Again, I mentioned the New York legislature I talked with this morning. Florida is looking to do it. Nevada has already done it. California did it even broader with all healthcare, not just therapy. And the other bill, which is it hasn't died yet because I haven't passed it, but I'm going to keep working on it, is again this insurance question about whether AI should ever be used to deny your health claims, your health insurance. So when AI is stepping between you and your doctor, that's when I'm going to freak out. That's why I'm going to say, you know what? We can't let AI decide whether or not you get admitted for mental health. We can't let AI decide whether or not you need surgery. It should be a doctor, it should be a nurse, it should be somebody who's trained to make that life and death decision. Again, you can see the theme here. So that bill passed the House, it got to the Senate, and you may have seen, I know everyone on the stage did, that the federal government was really, really close to passing a law that said states cannot pass any law whatsoever to regulate AI. I'm going to say it one more time because you might not know this. The federal government, when they were passing the budget this summer, there was a provision, it was very close to being in there in the final bill, would have prohibited states from regulating AI ever. Okay, so now we're not even talking about therapy, we're talking about doxing, we're talking about child pornography, we're talking about criminal aspects of AI. States could do nothing, right? And we were right there. I'm not even exaggerating, guys. This was in the House version. I think it was House, and then it got to the Senate, and it was pulled out in the Senate at the last minute, almost became law. We would have been having a very different conversation. So again, another instance where that didn't involve experts or scientists in that decision, it was politicians. And so what a perfect example of how the decisions we make can really impact a lot of people and not always for the better. I'll pause there.
Yeah. Well, that makes me think, in Illinois, already you can't do telehealth with a out-of-state patient. So if you live here and you cannot call a therapist in California and go on Zoom and have that relationship, right? Okay. So now in Illinois, you cannot go on ChatGPT or Gemini or anything and say, hey, I'm feeling depressed. What should I do?
You still
Yes,
can.
you can.
Okay.
You can't go, so it's not, this is a really important point. We're not regulating the user. We're regulating the company and the app and the developer. The idea behind, and not every state or policymaker might agree with this approach, but our approach was you are going to use character AI to do whatever you're going to do. You're going to ask OpenAI whatever questions are on your mind and things that are most important to you, and there's nothing I as a legislator or a regulator or law enforcement can do to stop that. The issue is, are we creating apps that are specifically holding themselves out as a therapist, but it's not a he or she, it's an it, because it's a bot that is not behind that bot is not a therapist. That's what our law did. And people today are still going on OpenAI, ChatGPT, and asking therapeutic questions. And that's the second piece that we didn't regulate. We didn't touch that. And again, I'm not sure how. Okay. I think that that's a question of whether or not the legislature, this is what I was saying earlier, can we tell ChatGPT if Bob Morgan goes online and asks a question about self-harm, are we going to regulate what ChatGPT can or cannot do and how they're supposed to do that? And if not, then it's just regulated by the market, by us, right?
Because we already can't use it for legal advice. it will answer something. But then if you were to go and read your ChatGPT in front of a lawyer and say, I'm representing myself, you can't then type the question in for ChatGPT to answer.
Oh, hire Amber instead.
What was that? Yeah. Exactly. So in Illinois also there was this act called BIPA, Bioinformation Privacy Act, 2008. First in our nation. It really launched that conversation nationwide, and it's still an anchor, and I believe that it was refreshed recently.
We amended it.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that? You probably know more about that. And also where scientists now can engage in thinking about privacy outside of, like, where do you need scientists?
Or do I meet scientists?
Well, not you. You're so good. She's there for you, scientists that need her.
I'm there to help you.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we're talking about the Biometric Information Privacy Act for Illinois, it's the strongest in the nation, and it's designed to protect consumers' biometric information. So what is biometrics, right? It's your fingerprint. It's your iris. It could be your face print, face geometry, right? Anything that can be used to identify you. And the reason that Illinois has such a strong law and it's gained such nationwide attention is because, remember those plaintiffs' firms I was talking to you about a little while ago? Yeah, they said, oh, awesome. I can help my clients win money for every single violation. So what does that mean? That means, let's say you're a trucker and your boss makes you check in to work every morning with your fingerprint, okay? And you never consented to that, and you never saw it in like a policy or anything that you had to do it. Every time, every day that you clocked in, right? That's a violation. So that like $500. So the plaintiffs' firms were like, oh, one person, 365 days. That's a lot of money. Twice a day.
Times 5 people.
Yeah, and Amber, did anyone have to get harmed to sue?
No harm. And so that, I mean, it just made their job so easy. They could just cut and paste all these complaints. And so you saw a sharp spike in BIPA litigation from like, I want to say 2020 to 2023, 24. And then finally they revised the statute, and now it's not every single violation. It's just that one time. So if I use my fingerprint 365 days, I can only claim for that one violation. And so that made the plaintiff's lawyer say, there's no more money here anymore. And so you saw, and you continue to see, a sharp drop and decrease in BIPA litigation. But it's still the strongest law in the nation. And we have people, it's shown because we have people going to Disney World from Illinois and saying, oh, I'm going to sue Disney World because they took my fingerprint and it's against BIPA. Or, you know, we're seeing a lot of it in the employment context where, I don't know, do y'all know Windows Hello on your computer, on your laptop, right? To access your computer through Windows Hello, you can either use your fingerprint or you can use your eye, right? And so our employers providing notice to their employees with regard to Windows Hello and signing into their work laptops, right? And so there's just a lot that companies have to do to comply with BIPA and to avoid any kind of costly litigation.
And I think this is a really good example of how difficult it is to have a real valid data challenge, right? I don't want my data being taken. We've heard about human-centered, and we've heard about we need all the data, and there's a tension between having that help us in our future individually and also have it be used for nefarious. And as scientists, where we need to be sensitive or careful in presenting these issues and sort of unintended consequences or consequences that can come to light because we don't take the time to engage fully and do scenario scoping and really work all together collaboratively to avoid some of these situations that may be frivolous lawsuits or extensive lawsuits for things that wasn't really trying to be like a health and safety issue, which you're trying to legislate. I want to thank you so much for this part of the conversation, and I'm going to turn it to the audience for questions. We have some questions online that I've been looking at that I've asked sort of while we were going through it, but I want to give some people a chance to ask a question from the audience here. And could we grab a mic for her? Okay, I'll just repeat the question.
Denies the approval of a procedure.
You want to repeat it?
Yeah, I'll repeat the question for those at home. The question is, I'm trying to regulate AI denying health insurance claims, and the question is, why is that better or worse or different from when insurance companies could go in to deny your claim? And that's a great question. We have spent decades in, if you're in insurance, insurance at its core is just like pooling risk. Okay, it's super boring. I'm not going to waste your time on like describing insurance. But what we do with health insurance is a little bit different from other types of insurance. And in health insurance, we require that if your claim is denied, you have to have it get denied by somebody who's licensed and trained and experienced in that area of medicine. All right, so it might not be the first line of review, but before your claim is denied, if you're going to be denied cancer treatment, it has to be reviewed by an oncologist or oncology nurse, somebody who's trained and professional in that area. So the difference is that person's accountable. An oncologist is licensed in the state of Illinois. The biggest risk to any licensed physician or healthcare professional is losing their license. It doesn't really matter what it is, right? It's the most valuable thing. We're lawyers. The most valuable thing to us is our law license, right? There are a lot of things that we're driven by professionally if we have a license. And so an AI has no incentive model. And AI doesn't really care. And AI is programmed generally to provide whatever it is its company wants it to do. And if it's driven by profit, if it's driven by efficiency, it's not driven by better healthcare outcomes because they don't have that accountability. So my biggest concern, this is actually like the real question about whether my bill should pass, if you really want to get down to it. Why is an insurance company different from AI? And I believe it's different. I believe it's different because we're talking about generative AI, self-learning AI. It's in a black box. No one in this room will ever know the decision-making that AI used to get to their decision. So if they're going to deny your cancer treatment, I believe as a policymaker, a person has to be involved with a review of that. Because I just think healthcare is different. I think we're making life and death decisions. And frankly, I will never, I don't know. We'll see in 30 years where we're at, but I don't trust AI to make a decision that's best for our society. I trust the professionals that we license and hold accountable. And that's why I think it's different. It's a really good question. Thank you.
And I also want to point out, as AI has been being developed for medical since the mid-1980s, it's being developed as what we call computer-aided diagnosis. It's always been as an aid to the clinician, and having the clinician, whether it's on screening, whether it's on diagnosis, make the final decision. Much of the AI out there is as a second reader or concurrent reader that they would use it that way. In fact, you have to test it that way before you go FDA. However, a problem is sometimes people say, this is really good, I'm just going to have it do it. I don't have to do anything. That's an issue with the end user then, not with the AI. And so both really have to be held to a high standard. What's a life and death AI use that everyone here probably has experienced? Who flies your airplane? And to me, about explainability and the complexity of AI, once AI reaches a really high performance level, maybe then we don't have to worry if it's explainable to everybody. Or you get your blood test results. You have your value and you have the range of normal. Does your clinician know how every single one of those blood tests works? Maybe they did in medical school. I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot who do, so I'm not insulting anyone. But we have to look at AI as some of the other aids that we have in our life. And
Autonomous driving, right?
Right, I'm not ready for autonomous AI for
But someday,
for medicine.
in our lifetimes, we're going to be facing that.
But to those points, can we talk about skill degradation now?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, good, good.
Yeah. So, does anyone know what skill degradation or AI rot is? Has anyone heard those terms?
AI
Rot.
rot.
AI rot. De-skilling. That's another term. I like to use skill degradation because I don't know. I made that up and I like the way it sounds. But yeah, AI rot or de-skilling. And then we also have automation bias, right? And so what we're seeing as lawyers, as professionals, and in the healthcare industry as well, we're seeing professionals, clinicians who have an over-reliance on AI tools, right? This new generation of doctors, this new generation of clinician, where, they're using the tool so much so that their ability to diagnose without the tool it just drops dramatically, right? And even after they stop using the AI tool, right, they don't regain their skill back. That's the scary part. And we're seeing that across the healthcare industry, but we're seeing that with lawyers and we're seeing that with school children. So there was a Lancet study done, and it was doctors who were performing colonoscopies, and for 6 months they used AI tools to help them, try to determine if their patients had colon cancer, and their ability to make that determination without AI was almost nil by the end of the 6 months. And then another 6 months went by where they didn't use the AI tools, and their performance level did not increase back to the range at which they started. And so I think that's AI has the potential to be super, super helpful, but it's super, super scary to see people's over-reliance on it. And then with regard to automation bias, I think my favorite war story, if you will, is a woman went viral last month on TikTok because she alleges she went to her GP and, just for a routine checkup, and ran some tests, and the AI tool came back and said she had had a heart attack. And he was like, you're in bad health. You need to go see your cardiologist. She's scared. She's freaking out. She goes to the cardiologist. Cardiologist is like, there is nothing wrong with you. The AI tool was incorrect. And what happened was the GP didn't bother. There was no human in the loop, right? He didn't bother to double check the AI results or her EKG. He just saw the results on the printout, said, oh, you had a heart attack, you're in bad health, and sent her along her way. And so I think we just have to be very careful here with the power that AI presents, but the dangers as well.
Thank you. Question?
Yes, I love the diversity on this panel, but the one big missing piece is anyone from any of the companies creating the AI. And so what I'm interested in is, where is the leverage? So researchers, you want more representative data going into creating the algorithms, right? So better data more representative data, but how are you going to get that information to them, and how are you going to force them to use it when their incentive is not? Their incentive is most expedient stuff, cheapest stuff, easiest to get. And legislators and legislators are like, you move too slow. Legislation just moves way too slow to move them, as does law. And if legislators don't understand it enough, judges don't understand it fast enough, so the law is going to be too slow to catch up to this. And so what I'm wondering is, if the company's incentive is to move as fast as possible and the public is moving that fast, or they're trying to get the public to move faster even via media, so instead of Dr. Google, now it's Dr. ChatGPT and Dr. Grok, right? So my question is, where's the leverage? Where is the leverage coming to get those companies to start following what you're saying? Some of the risks, cutting back on the risks, cutting back or improving the data even going into it. Where's that leverage coming from your disciplines?
I'll jump into that. National Science Policy Network did an AI in healthcare in Boston University also, and we started it with 2 tech CEOs, one at Boston AI and one at Therapeutics. And so you can go back and watch that one. But what they would argue, and what I'm going to be paraphrasing that they said, is that their motivation is to have the best life-saving companies possible. Now, it might be because of my self-selection as a scientist. I picked the right company CEOs to participate on our panels with 3 elected officials as well. But one of the things that they saw as a gap also was not understanding the legal and the legislative constraints and challenges. And so that they are
on
now
their
taking,
side?
What was that?
They're saying that they're not understanding it in-house?
Correct, that they as company CEOs weren't appreciating the policy challenges and the guardrails needed, and so that they were, as 2 CEOs, going to play a larger role in participating in legislative matters by just reading bills and seeing what's coming out. But where we could, as consumers and scientists and educated group, is lead by our purse strings. And so that takes coalition building, that takes cooperation, convenience, and things like that. And so that's what we
Except that the consumer cannot. I cannot choose. How could I possibly choose, in trying to find a physician in this country, in healthcare in America, and choose one that isn't using bad AI? I mean, that's just an impossible burden to put on a consumer level.
That's a great question, and I think our systems in every state are not designed so that you have to make that choice. That's why the regulators are involved. They're inspectors at the state Illinois Department of Professional and Financial Regulation, oversees all doctors, as an example. And if there's a doctor or a lawyer, as we've seen more and more around the country, a better example, a lawyer uses AI in a brief and cites a legal case that AI gave them was not a real case. Literally made up, all right? It doesn't take long for a judge to figure that out, and guess what happens to that lawyer? They're gonna lose their law license, which again is the most dramatic incentive. So what we see with physicians, whether it is not charting appropriately, which is not a new concept, and relying upon and delegating responsibility to somebody who's not trained to do what they're doing because it's cheaper, it's faster, that physician or that higher level professional is accountable for that delegation, that collaborative agreement. So our system is already designed for that, but AI creates a whole new challenge, and who's gonna hold them accountable, and the regulators have to step in on that.
Yeah.
And there was a question, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I have 2 parts, and I don't know that it's going to be satisfying, but one part is for the consumer to be at least a little bit more AI literate. And I know this is a hard question because, like you said, I can't regulate what ChatGPT responds for healthcare, but we can hopefully not ask ChatGPT, but look for better bots, right? But that's a hard question because you have to somehow get that amount of knowledge. I do think there are a lot more courses that are about AI and English, AI and law, AI, right? So everybody is gonna get more opportunities to get that kind of knowledge. On the other hand, in academia, I hope, we are also trying to build our own smaller version of these models, right? So they are not as they can't compete with ChatGPT in terms of how much data it sees, but we can build it on site and tune it with the knowledge that we know. And so if Sinai does adopt a model, for example, it could advertise and say, this is private, it's run locally, it follows these rules, etc. And so hopefully we can spread the word that there are such models that are smaller but private and responsible.
And could I add
Sure.
to that? So let's think of two types of AI here in medicine. There's the AI that is developed, goes through the FDA, which is regulated, and it is then cleared for a specific task on a specific population, however you want to describe that population. That's then used maybe in some doctor's office or something, but if it's used incorrectly, it's not. So that's where an error could happen. The other type of AI are these kind of public AIs, where people are taking ChatGPT and using it for, that's not going under regulation for all the medical stuff. People are just using it for medicine, medical decision making. So I think we have to maybe don't throw everything in the same bucket, because there is some aspects of AI that are working, but just like anything else, you could have an X-ray system developed for the hand and you're using it for the stomach. I'm just throwing that out there. It's how the end user. So that's why we have to have who's doing what and who's responsible.
Thank you. I'm going to ask for the 3 questions succinctly, all at the same time, because we have about 7 minutes left.
Okay. Well, okay, so I testified to help get the SESTA bill passed. And in August, the Southside Weekly wrote an article of the negative effects of SESTA not being properly implemented in the state of Illinois. So, I'm wondering, how could, a grassroots initiative that have lived experience have a seat at the table that's creating a solution based off of lived experience? Because I believe lived experience should be on par with clinical knowledge, because a lot of times, there's been experience where I lost trust in the medical system, and AI has been that tool that helped me understand what was really going on. Because a lot of times doctors, they be quick, fast, they gotta see the next, and don't have the time to properly understand. And then it'd be a constant battle, I know my body better than what your medical book or you learn in medical school. So.
That's a really great question. And Boston AI is a company that is thinking about how to interact with the patient with their own data. But we are going to get back to that question in just a second, because I know you have an answer.
We got you.
Thank you. What's your name? Can you state your name?
My name is Faya.
Faya. Thank you, Faya.
Yeah.
Hey, Jerry, Nicola, I'm a physician at the University of Illinois, Chicago, and so I just wanted to respond to this nice lady's question, because it's a really familiar situation that I've had since I was an intern. And that used to be HI instead of AI, and it was like the resident, and then the attending never sees the patient, and whatever the resident said happened, right? So you're replacing the AI with the HI, and we testify now in all of our notes. I've personally seen and examined the patient. I've spoken with the patient. I concur. And so you have to do exactly that with the AI, and that's a big lockdown on the AI.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And I was thinking, because when you're saying that the EKG and somebody just read the results of the report, they've got to testify, that they've got to make a statement. I saw the EKG. I read the EKG, the AI, with the assistance of the AI, and that helped.
Now we just need accountability and enforcement.
Yeah, because isn't that the question, right? Who's liable, right? Is it the doctor? Is it the system? Is it the developer? Is it the hospital that made them use the AI? Who's liable in the instance where it's used improperly? And to that I say, as a lawyer, everyone's getting sued.
This is such an interesting panel with lawyers on the panel. Thank you. But before we get sued, how can lived experience help inform your legislation?
Definitely want to avoid getting sued. That was such a great question because the truth is that we don't, at the state level, in Springfield, and certainly even more so at the federal level, we don't, we have a big gulf between lived experience and grassroots experience and the decisions we make at the state and the federal level. So what I always try and do is I have local community groups that I meet with on everything. So I bring in those who are dealing with senior care, those who are educators, childcare, you go down the list, fire departments. And I bring people into my office in the district so I can hear more on the grassroots level how any issue is impacting them. Because again, as a legislator, the truth is we have to always approach the situation, the issue, and the subject as if we don't know as much as the person sitting next to us. If you lose that, you're not going to be a good legislator. And so it's not going down to Springfield. It's Robert Peters is probably your state senator, or he's nearby based on wherever you live. Find your local city council member from the city of Chicago, your local state representative and senator, and reach out to their office. They all have staff, and their staff's only job is to hear from you and find out what the issue is and what is it that you want to see in laws, what laws are not working for you, and what can we do better. That is really the answer, which is local, community-based. We were talking about this backstage about if I get 5 emails from my district, 5 independent people on any issue, I'm going to pay attention. If I get a mass mail of 1,000 emails from people that don't live in my district, I'm not going to pay as close attention. But if it's somebody that comes in my district office who's struggling with something or has an idea, I really care about that, and I promise you 100% of legislators do too.
I just want to say to Faya's statement, I think it's a great point because Black women have historically received what I would say substandard care. And so I think we're going to see a rapid increase in marginalized communities and those who don't trust the medical establishment using AI tools like ChatGPT or these therapy bots and things like that to question what's wrong with me, what's happening with me. And that can be so dangerous because these tools are not perfect and they falsify data, like answers, they hallucinate. And so I think that's going to be something that you're going to see a lot of in the future. And I don't know how we deal with that.
But it also could be a promise where people that traditionally won't seek medical professionals, a lot of our men, especially our Black men that won't go, or Asian men, a lot of men won't go to see mental health professionals because of the stigmatization. So it could also be an opportunity as these AI bots get better and better and on vulnerable populations for some revolutionary work to be done to healing our communities. So time is up. That went by really quickly. I want to thank you, our audience, for joining us today, live and online. Thank you so much. I also want you to join me in thanking our panelists for this enlightening and amazing conversation. And we can't have done this without months and months of planning. I want to especially thank the collaboration between C2ST, Sasha and Nicole and team, and thank you so much. I can't wait to do it again. This is just the beginning of a conversation about AI and healthcare. It is not going away. It has promise and it has peril, and we should cooperate and collaborate, and so it makes it even better because when all of our minds together are working, we can really tackle some challenging problems. So again, thank you. Have a wonderful night. And if you have any questions, you can find all of us online. Thank you.
Thanks so much for coming, everybody. I think our panelists are going to stick around to answer any questions in the audience for a few minutes. And please remember that this is available online on CPL's YouTube and Facebook, so tell somebody who wasn't here.